Now what they want to prove is, hence look at the society, don't look at the individuals per se. So that is why Plato is saying that let's try to understand the state first, then you can understand the individual. Because state is nothing but a bigger form of individual. By that logic, what he wants to say, whatever the characteristics that you are finding in an individual, you can find it out in the state. So once you understand the state, now why to understand the state? It is bigger, or the magnified images can be understood very clearly than the small images. So it is easy to understand big letters than to understand small letters. This is also the thing, this is called state. So when you are studying, small letters won't give you convenience. But if you are studying in the enlarged or magnified pictures, magnified images, you are going to understand that very clearly. So Plato and Socrates say that let's don't understand it from the individual perspective, understand it from the state's perspective, because the study is not different. State is nothing but individual. That is what they say. State is nothing but individual writ large. So if you are understanding the state, you'll understand individual, which also means if you are understanding the individual, you'll understand the state. Both are having interlinkages. Why? Whatever the characteristics that are present in individual, you'll find out in the state, and state has the same characteristics of an individual. Now, what is the logic that they wanted to prove here through this? One thing they proved is, you said the weak has to follow justice, the might need not follow justice. This concept is wrong. Why? One day the weak becomes so strong and they revolt together, and then this might people have to flee away, leaving their happiness. So this is not justice for you. So they said that in order to understand justice, it should not be like this contradictions. Today it is working, tomorrow it might not work. So justice is something which will not change with time and space. Right, what is time? Today it is working like Mahendra Rajapaksa in 2018, but in 2020 Mahendra Rajapaksa's situation was different. So justice is not that thing which varies from time to time, space to space. It is something which has universal value, universal, everlasting, and it is transcendental. It can be applicable everywhere and at all the spaces of time, and it can be reflected in every situation. Through this thing, they are saying that your justice doesn't have instrumental value, but it is something called intrinsic value, just like your human soul. Just like the soul is having intrinsic value. What is that intrinsic value? Your soul never dies. Your soul never feel becomes old. This is your body which becomes old. It is your body which loses beauty, but the soul is everlasting. Just like that, justice is something which is everlasting. So try to understand the soul, and then you'll understand justice. Now what is the human soul? We have understood this already. Now let me go back to that concept called the soul that we discussed quickly. Now what he said about the human soul: human soul is everlasting. It has traveled to the God's kingdom. It has experienced the God's kingdom, and it has got something imprinted on the soul, right? By going there, right, it will understand how the God's kingdom is working, and the qualities or the characteristics which are present in the God's kingdom are imprinted on the human soul. Just like when you go to some friend's house or some relative's house for a week or for 10 days, we'll try to imbibe those things. When you come back, you will still be in that mood of your relatives or your home, right? If you're staying far away your home, so you'll be imprinting those values. Similarly, soul is also such a beautiful thing. Once you go there, you forget everything here, you get imprinted the things, and then when it is coming to when it is returning to the earth, it takes the body. Now it will still be remembering that soul, just like we remember after coming to hostels, right? After coming to hostel for the first 2 days and 3 days, we'll just be thinking about our homes. Similarly, once this soul is coming to the body, still it will be thinking about the so-called God's kingdom. I also said Soul is everlasting, but the difference between the soul is how many days you remember that. Right, there will be some people who are returning to the hostels, but they will forget everything that has happened in home within 1 day or 2 days. There will be some people who will be remembering that for 1 week. There will be some people who will be just thinking about their homes altogether. Right, there will be sick leave or home leave for almost the entire month. Right, this is different kinds of people. Similarly, soul is also different in that way. So some people will be forgetting what has happened in the God's kingdom very quickly. Some people will be remembering it for a longer period, some people will be remembering it forever. Similarly, soul is classified on that direction. The capacity of its remembrance, based on this, soul is classified. How far it remembers. It is remembering whatever is happening in the God's kingdom forever. Then that is called supreme soul. Why supreme soul? The capacity to remember is very high. If it is remembering for medium term, this is called medium, and this is called low scale, low type of soul. So, supreme souls, what Aristotle said, this is the soul of a philosopher. Medium soul, it is the soul of a courageous person. Low soul, it is the soul of an appetite person. As a result, he compares this with the so-called gold. These type of souls are just like gold. You find them very rare. Medium type of souls are like silver, which are present in larger quantities than gold, but again, compared to the such thing called copper, they are not present to that ultimate level. So what they are trying to say is understand the soul, then you understand the justice. Now, what they are saying, now human soul is made up of three things. Some souls made up of three things in the sense based on the remembrance capacity. Some souls can remember it forever, some souls can remember it for a shorter period of time, some souls will remember it for the shortest period of time. Those type of souls are called appetites, courageous, and philosophers. So, what they say is society is composed of these things, these three elements. Why? Individuals belong either to this class, either to this class, either to this class. Now, state is nothing but individual writ large. So, state will have the similar characteristics of the so-called gold, silver, and appetite, just like the individuals are having. So, how they say this? How say this? How they say this? They say this by explaining you the theory of formation of state. They come to the theory of formation of state. They try to explain this through how the state is formed initially. So what these two persons says is, so they are countering this fellow called glucon and Adimantus. They have countered in two ways. Now, what Socrates says is, in order to understand how the state has formed, they start with how the state has formed. In the initial state, or in the primitive state, suppose that there is a territory. Suppose that there is a territory, and in this territory there is a very small population. Small population. You have enough vegetation. You have enough vegetation. Under this circumstance, people will fulfill their appetite. Their hunger will be fulfilled, and in this state, they are living happily. Why? Everyone needs is met. Now, this type of state where persons are, now this is a state where you will find in imaginative stories only, but in reality, you don't find these things. Everyone living happily, right? So, this type of state in political science, you call it as a PIGS state. PIGS, PIGS state. PIGS state means a state where there is enough territory for the people, enough vegetation for the people, enough appetite, enough to fulfill their appetite, That state is known as a fixed state. It is also known as a fever state. Fixed state or a fevered state, which means they create some sort of excitement. When you go to movies, the excitement that you feel, when you go to this state, you'll find that. But they are very rare to find, right? Now, what they say is, in this type of state, people will be feeling excitement. Why excitement? Excitement means they feel very good about the quality of life here. Why they feel very excited about quality of life? Because quality depends upon various crafts that people are doing. Various crafts. People will be engaging in their own crafts, like 24 crafts movies that you go, right? So what they say is, this is the quality of life. When quality will life improve? When there is various crafts in the state. In order to have various crafts, what it has to do? You require more resources, and there has to be more crafts, which means people should come into your state, more outsiders should come into your state, which means in order to have more outside people, someone has to invade your state, or you have to invade other state. You have to invade other state. Why? When you win their territory, you'll have vast territories, vast resources, vast people, vast crafts. When there is so many crafts, quality of the people will be improved and there will be excitement, right? What China is trying to do? China is trying to occupy Galwan, China is trying to occupy South China Sea, China is trying to occupy Japanese islands, China is trying to go to Mongolia also, right? Taiwan, Mongolia. Now what does they want? They want more resources so that their life or excitement or happiness of life will be improved. That is what they are thinking. So for to do this, you need a class of people, a class which can expand and provide protection. And this class is known as, from the existing people, this class is known as the soldier class. Hence they say that the soldier class exists in the state because if the state has to be a fixed state or a fever state, you should have more resources, you should have more outside people to do the works. As a result, you have to go and wage wars and win it. For that, you have one class known as the soldiers class. Now, these people have courage. Soldiers have the courage. They can go and wage the wars. Right? Courage. So they will be looking at expanding. Now, when they are expanding, to feed these soldiers, you require another class, and that class is called the class of producers. There should be producers to feed, who are protecting you and who are giving you more resources. This emerges the so-called producer class. So now two classes emerged. One class is the soldiers class, the second class is the producers class. Next one is, in order to guide them, in order to bridge these two fellows, you require one more class who can frame the laws, who can ensure that there is a proper coordination among them, and that is the ruling class, who is having the knowledge on how to link them very appropriately, which means who is having the reason. What is knowledge? Reason. Who is having the reason, right? So in a fixed state, people will be living happily. In a fever state, people will be living in happily. But Normally, this will not be the thing. Normally, the states will not be a pig state. As a result, in order to make their state as a pig state, they wanted to have these things. So what they say is, in any state which is not a pixel state means don't consider that it is the wrong thing. Pixel state means a very excitement state. Any state which is not a pixel state has three classes. What are those three classes? The producers class, the warrior class, the ruling class. The producer class will have one type of soul. What is that soul? Appetite. Warrior class will have one type of soul, courage. Ruling class will have one type of soul, that is called reason. There is producer class where they are producing the basic things. Warrior class protects the producers. Ruling class rules to build them. So in the West, the societies are classified into three: producing, protection, rules. In India also, you find a similar context. Brahmins, producer class is not Brahmins, it is Vaishyas and Sudras. Warriors are Kshatriyas, ruling class as Brahmins. Right, in India also you find a similar context. Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra. In West also you find the same thing. Now, what they say is, any state which is not a pig state is an ideal state, you should have these three classes. And these three classes are present in a state. Now, these three classes are the elements of individual soul, because the individual soul is made up of appetite, reason, courage. Hence, they say that whatever you are finding in individuals, you find in the so called state, and that is what they wanted to prove. That is, state is individual writ large. Whatever the elements that you are finding in the human soul, there are three elements. Similarly, you'll find three types of classes in the state. Hence, they say that state is nothing but individual writ large. ఏ విధంగా అయితే మనుషుల్లో వేరే వేరే ఆత్మలు ఉంటాయో, మూడు రకాల ఆత్మలు ఉంటాయో, స్టేట్లో కూడా అవే ఉంటాయి. State is nothing but a combination of these three elements, just like the soul is having these three things. Hence, if you look at the state as a whole, there are three classes. The same thing applies to an individual's human soul. By looking at the appetite, or by looking at the courage, or by looking at the reason that the human soul has, you can classify human beings into three types. Similarly, the state has three elements. That is what they wanted to prove. And they wanted to prove that state is individual writ large. And they wanted to say that once you are understanding the state, you can understand the so-called individual. Now, the thing is, now they want, this is what they have proved. State is nothing but individual. How? Whatever the characteristics that they have, you are finding that in the state. The next point is how the state becomes just. That is the what you have to prove, right? This is what the debate is. How the state becomes just or justice. Now, what they say is, if the state has to be unjust, look at the state. State has three elements, right? If the state has to be adjust, or if the state has to be happy, if it wants to reach the so-called peaks state, now the fellows who are in the state, all the three classes should do their duty perfectly. They should do their duty perfectly. No one should interfere into others' business. No one should interfere into others' business. Say, for example, if you want to create a pig state, the protection class has to go and win the war. They cannot fail. If they are failing, this means they are failing in their duty. So, in order to ensure that the state is enlarging, in order to ensure that the state is having so many resources, the first requirement is The first requirement is every class in the state has to fulfill their duty to 100%. Courageous people should never lose the war, and the producing class should always feed the courageous people, right? Otherwise, if they are not feeding, then producer class will be not doing their duty. Because of that, the state will lose its war. Similarly, the ruling class, they have to always guide with reason. If they are failing it, they are not going to bridge the gap. So what they say is, when can there be a justice state, or when there can be a happy state? Happy state or a peace state or an excitement state will be present when the individual classes are doing their duty perfectly. Do your duty perfectly and don't poke your nose into others' class. You do your duty, they will do their duty. You don't come inside them and say that ఇది ఇలా కాదు అలా చేయాలి అనేసి. మీ పని మీరు చేయండి, పక్కాగా చేయండి, పక్కనవాడు పని చేస్తాడు, ఎవరి పనిలో ఇంటర్ఫియర్ అవ్వకూడదు. ఇలా జరుగుతూ ఉంటే then they say that you can have a happy state, and in that state, what they are saying, in that state there will be justice. Why there is justice? Because everyone is happy in this state, everyone is doing their own work without interference, and they are living in harmony. If you look at this concept of Plato or Socrates and Plato, they are saying that a just state is one state where people lives in harmony. They are not speaking about equality. They are not speaking about equality. Equality means everyone will be trying to become a king, everyone wants to become a warrior, but that is not possible. Equality is not justice. Equality is not justice, but harmony is justice. People have to live in harmony. What does this mean? If you want to live in harmony, you have to do your work, and that is called justice. And many people confuse this justice to equality. But Plato and Socrates, they were very clear. If you are trying to say that equality is similar to justice, you are wrong, because equality is something different, justice is something different. You cannot have equality at the same time justice, right? So what they mean to say is, though the classes are themselves unequal. Why? Some have appetite souls, some have courageous souls, some have reason souls, and to their soul they are doing their work. You cannot say that everyone has to do the same thing, everyone has to have the same equality. That is not possible. Hence, rather than speaking about the so-called justice in terms of equality, they are not speaking about equality or inequality, they are speaking about harmony. How the harmony can establish? Harmony can be established only when they are doing their duties. So what they wanted to say is, a just state, a just state will be depend upon the work that the soul is doing, based on the soul's dominance. How, with which element your soul is dominating? Is it reason? Is it the element of reason? Is it the elements of courage? Is it the reason of appetite? Which is solving, which is the dominant soul in your body? Do that work. Don't interfere into others' meaning. What does this mean? They mean to say that every individual will perform the task which is naturally suited to them. Which is naturally suited to them. Everyone has to do which is naturally suited to them. If you are born in a Mukesh Ambani's family, Ambani family has to do business. His son has to do business. Why? Because he learns the things. So if you are born in a farming class, you have to do that same thing. So they are saying that more or less just like our concept of birth, they are saying the same thing. Now, so what they say is, in a just state, everyone will perform a task which is naturally suited to them. And when they are doing this, this is an ideal situation. Ideal situation. Now, what is the advantage when everyone is doing their own work without interfering into the others' work? What is the advantage that they are going to have? The thing which is natural can be done with excellence. There will be some people who will be good at dance. There will be some people who will be good at singing, right? There will be some people who will be good at teaching, right? So whatever is naturally suited for you, if you are trying that, then you'll become excellent in that field. If you have seen one movie of Allu Arjun, right? In that the villain says, మనకు వచ్చిన పని ఎప్పుడు ఫ్రీగా చేయకూడదు, మనకి రాని పనిలో మనం ఏలు పెట్టకూడదు అనేసి. So more or less that is the concept that Plato is speaking. So each perform a task which is suited to them. So the first principle of justice as per Plato is functional specialization. Functional specialization. You are specialist in one, do that work, don't become a generalist. Anni cheyandi, ala cheyandi, ila cheyandi ani. Right? When we went today morning, there was one, we went to a hotel and there was one person who is saying everyone how to do the work, but that fellow is not doing the work. Right? So you'll find many of those people in our society. So the first principle of Plato's or Socrates justice is functional specialization, which means everyone will perform the task for which they are best suited. Do your work for which you are best suited. This is also known as proper stationing. This is other terms that you will be using in writing the answers. Proper stationing. Station the people as per their human soul. Station means go and keep the people in that bracket. Proper stationing is the first form of duty, which means assign the people for which they are naturally suited. Right? This is the first thing that they are doing. The second principle of justice, as per these persons, is non-interference. I already said, don't poke your nose into others. Non-interference. Now, he says that it is very essential that one class should not interfere in the task of others, so that each performs their duty without interference or without disturbance or without destruction. So that state becomes a just state or an ideal state. Why? In the ideal state, everyone will be everyone will be happy. How? You will be doing the work which will be naturally suited to you, which means you will be doing it happily, right? Rather than coming to UPSC because of parents' pressure and thinking every day about it, right? Do the work that is very much which you like, which is naturally suited to you, right? Then that makes you happy, right? So, in order to the state to become virtuous, or in order to the state to become ideal, acquiring excellence requires two things. One is functional specialization, which means station the people as per their elements. That is called proper stationing. And the second one is not interference. And what by this logic, what they wanted to say is then people will be peaceful, they won't be interfering into others' works. Then they will live in harmony because they know that I should not interfere into their, and they will be reaping their excellence. Now, many people criticized Plato because of this reason. Now, what Plato is saying, Plato is indirectly saying you go for inequality, or Plato is saying that many people, critics of Plato, say that he is propounding inequality. He is not a champion of equality. Many people said he is not a champion of inequality. Right. So, what they have said is democracy is nothing but political equality. But if you look, Plato has no regards for democracy. Why? In political equality, with this concept of equality, you are making a fellow who is not suited for ruling to come and rule. Right? A appetite fellow is coming and ruling, and that is the reason why your state is under this under these problems. So what Plato said is Don't argue for political equality or anything. Do the work that is suited for you. So excellence is one thing, and excellence is a virtue as per Plato. Excellence is a virtue. So what Plato says is there are four virtues of an ideal state. Four virtues of an ideal state. What are those? First thing is reason. Second thing is courage. Third one is temperance. And with this, you'll achieve one more virtue that is called justice. Reason is the virtue of people who have men who is having the so-called men who is having the so-called the soul of gold, men who is having the soul of silver. Temperance means control. Control, okay. Have your temperament, have your control, don't lose your temperance, right? That is the thing. Appetite class has this temperance, warrior class has this courage, ruling class or the philosopher class has the so-called this one. And the fourth virtue is justice, and justice is the virtue of virtues. Justice is the fourth virtue, and he says that of all the virtues, this is the biggest virtue, or justice is known as the virtue of virtues, which is also known as the supreme virtue. Now why they say it is virtue of virtues, అన్ని virtues కంటే ఇదే ఫస్ట్ virtue అనేసి ఎందుకు చెప్తున్నాడంటే he is saying that other virtues like reason, courage and temperance will exist only in a state where there is justice, which means they can fulfill only when there is functional specialization. Are you understanding now why justice is called as architectonic principle, or why justice is called as the virtue of all the virtues? This is a virtue, courage is a virtue, reason is a virtue, maintaining temperance is a virtue, but this happens only when there is functional specialization. If one fellow who doesn't have the thing to reason, if he is entering it here, then this virtue will get lost. This virtue will no longer remain. As a result, what they are saying is only in the state where there is functional specialization, when there is no interference, then only you will have the other virtues getting fulfilled for themselves. Hence, it is the justice which is the foundational principle of all the other things like reason, temperance, courage, equality, harmony, and every other thing will be based on one strong foundation principle called justice. As a result, they said that justice is architectonic virtue of all the other virtues. This is how Plato, in his book called Republic, explains one thing called justice, and this book speaks about concerning justice. Concerning justice. This is how they say that a just state is a state where people will be having happy life, where people will be doing their own work. Right? If you look at Indian Upanishads also says the same thing. You do your work. A Sudra has to do their own work. A Kshatriya class has to do their own work. A ruling class has to do their own work. A ruling class has to do their own work. Right? This is what they say, and they say this to do the work. Hence, if you look again here, you find a relation between the so-called you can find the relation between the so-called Indian Upanishads and Western political thought again. More or less, they are speaking about the same thing. Right, this is what the city soul analogy is. Right, just to understand the soul, because on the soul it is imprinted about justice. Once you are understanding that, you'll understand who has to govern, who has to defend, who has to produce the thing, and just is an architectonic principle. So this is how in this state virtues are going to convert into excellence. In this state virtues are going to convert into excellence, right? Virtues like reason, courage, appetite, they will be converting into excellence. Why excellence? Because people will be living in harmony. As long as people are living in harmony, you will not have such a disturbance, that is the disturbance that they said earlier. The disturbance that they said earlier. What is that disturbance? The disturbance that they said earlier. The disturbance that they said earlier. What is that disturbance? If the weak is unhappy, one day they are going to create problems to the strong, just like they did in Sri Lanka. So, this is not justice, but justice is where the strong, weak will live in harmony with each other. How they live in harmony with each other? By knowing or doing their duty perfectly. So, Plato's theory of justice is duty-based approach. Duty-based approach. They are propounding their theory as duty-based approach. In that area, there will be harmony. As there is harmony, people will be living in the so-called peaceful environment, and that is known as a happy life, and that is known as ideal state where everyone will be doing their own work. Now, everyone will be happy. So, the theory of Plato's ideal state is speaking about something called Plato's theory of ideal state is speaking about an ideal state is a state where there will be justice, where there will be just, right? So, this is the concept of Plato's theory of justice, which is meant by duty based ethics. And there were equal criticisms of Plato. Criticisms of Plato is he has divided the society into three classes, and there is no freedom for the people to move from one class to other class. Now this is primitive form of justice, but this doesn't work in modern times. If you are asking to restrict only to the work that you are assigned based on your soul, then people won't like in the modern days. But if you look at the present context, Plato appears to be correct again. So this is what the Plato's theory of ideal state or just state is. Now, what they wanted to do is they wanted to build up this just society. How can we build this just to society where how you'll test people with the soul and how you'll make that state ready? For this, they speak about one theory that is called theory of knowledge or education. So they said, what is a just state? Now they want to speak about how to build that just state. Through theory of knowledge, they want to build that just state. This I'll continue tomorrow. This is for the day. I hope you have understood. This is less than 1 minute. If you have any doubt, you can post me. Otherwise, we'll meet tomorrow. So this brings us to the next concept called theory of knowledge, education. Right then, we'll wind it up. Thanks for joining. Have a nice day.